I nodded, watching the man in front of me struggle with his emotions. Sam looked exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. His shoulders slumped forward as if the weight of his thoughts had settled deep inside him. I don't even know why I came here. Maybe I just needed to talk to someone. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. He exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face before continuing. Jack and I were inseparable as kids. We grew up in the same neighborhood, spent every summer riding bikes until the streetlights came on, dreamed about the future together. But now, it feels like we live in completely different worlds. He let out a dry chuckle, though there was no humor in it. He always knew what he wanted. Medicine was his dream, and he never let anything distract him from it. Studied hard, got the best grades, won a scholarship. And me? I just drifted. Played video games, went out with friends, never really thought about the future. Back then, it seemed like that was enough. I leaned back slightly, allowing the silence to settle between us. Sometimes, it's in the pauses that the real meaning begins to take shape. Do you two still keep in touch? Yeah. He works as a doctor at the local hospital. I drop by sometimes, and we talk about old times. But it's different now. I see what he's accomplished, how people respect him. And when I look at myself, I don't even know what I see. His words hung in the air, heavy with something deeper than just nostalgia. Do you envy him? Sam frowned, considering. Not in the way you'd think. It's not his job or his money. It's his certainty. He never doubted himself, never questioned if he was on the right path. I look at my own life and realize, I never made a real choice. I just let things happen. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. And yet, the friendship survived. A small, almost surprised smile crossed his face. Yeah. Somehow, it did. It survived years, distance, success, and failure. And the weirdest part? He never looks down on me. Never acts like I'm less. He just accepts me. I met his gaze. That's real friendship. But the question is, what do you want now? To stay in the past or start moving forward? Sam fell silent. A long, contemplative silence. And in that pause, something shifted. Maybe, for the first time, he was starting to ask himself the questions he had avoided for so long. Sam stared at the floor for a long time, as if the answers were hidden somewhere in the pattern of my office rug. His fingers tapped absently against his knee, a nervous rhythm that betrayed the thoughts racing through his mind. I don't know if I regret my choices or if I just regret that I didn't make any at all. He let out a heavy breath and leaned back, rubbing his face with both hands before looking at me again. I think about it all the time. What if I had tried harder in school? What if I had chosen something, anything, to work toward? Would I be like him now? Would I have a career, stability, maybe even a family? Instead, I'm. His voice trailed off, but the unspoken words lingered in the air. Stuck. Sam nodded slowly. Yeah. That's exactly it. I feel stuck. And the worst part is, it's not like I have a bad life. I have a job. I have friends. I have enough to get by. But it's like I never really stepped into my own story. I just let life happen to me while Jack went out and built his. He shook his head, exhaling sharply. It's not just that he's successful. It's that he had a goal, and he chased it. And when I sit across from him now, it's like I can see every moment where I should have made a choice, and I didn't. I let the silence settle for a moment before speaking. It sounds like what you're feeling isn't just about Jack. It's about the version of yourself you could have been. Sam's jaw tightened. Yeah. And it's like I can't escape it. Every time we meet up, I see it all over again. The difference between us. He asks how I'm doing, and I say, same old, same old. And he smiles like he doesn't mind, like he's happy just to catch up. But I can't shake this feeling that I'm the only one who notices how much we've changed. What do you think Jack sees when he looks at you? Sam frowned, caught off guard by the question. I don't know. A friend? Someone he grew up with? And do you think he sees you as less? No, but that's the problem. He should. His own words seemed to hit him like a punch to the gut. He let out a bitter laugh and rubbed the back of his neck. That sounds messed up, doesn't it? It sounds like you're being harder on yourself than Jack ever would be. Sam sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just wish I could go back. I'd do things differently. But you can't. He flinched slightly, as if hearing it out loud made it more real. Yeah. I know. What you can do is decide what comes next. Sam gave a tired smile, but there was something else behind it this time, something quieter, more uncertain. That's the problem, document. I don't even know where to start. Sam leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his fingers laced together so tightly his knuckles turned white. We went out for drinks last weekend. Just me and Jack. It was supposed to be a casual thing, you know. Just two old friends catching up. His lips pressed into a thin line, as if holding back something heavier than words. At first, it was fine. We talked about stupid things, old memories, people we used to know, dumb stuff we did as kids. And for a moment, it felt normal. Like nothing had changed. But then, it did. His hands loosened, falling into his lap. He asked me how things were going. Really asked. Not just polite small talk, but that kind of question where you know the other person actually cares about the answer. And I felt exposed. Like he could see through the bullshit. He let out a dry laugh. I told him I was fine. Work's fine. Life's fine. And he just nodded, like he wasn't going to push. But I saw it. That look. Not pity, not judgment, just this quiet understanding. Like he knew I wasn't fine, but he wasn't going to force me to say it. The air in the room felt heavier now, thick with unspoken thoughts. It pissed me off. Sam's voice dropped, quieter now, almost ashamed. I don't even know why. He wasn't being condescending. He wasn't showing off or making me feel small. If anything, he was just being Jack. The same guy he's always been. But for some reason, it made me feel worse. His jaw tightened, and he looked away, staring at some invisible point on the wall. I snapped at him. Told him to stop acting like he was better than me. That just because he had his life together didn't mean he could sit there and analyze mine. The silence that followed was sharp. He didn't even get mad. Just sat there for a second, then said, Sam, I don't think I'm better than you. I just want to know if you're happy. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. And I couldn't answer him. The admission hung between us, raw and unfiltered. So I left. Told him I had an early morning, paid my tab, and walked out. Haven't texted him since. His shoulders slumped forward, the weight of that night pressing down on him. He didn't do anything wrong. I know that. But I still felt like I was drowning sitting across from him. Like every success he's had is just another reminder of how lost I am. I let the quiet settle before speaking. And what do you think would have happened if you had told him the truth? Sam exhaled sharply, shaking his head. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe he'd just listen. Maybe he'd try to help. His fingers clenched into fists again, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Or maybe it would have made it real. Sam let out a slow breath, rubbing his palms against his jeans as if trying to scrub away the tension buried under his skin. His shoulders were hunched, his gaze locked somewhere on the floor between us. I keep thinking about what he asked me. If I'm happy. His fingers curled into fists, then relaxed, the motion restless, uncertain. I don't even know what happiness is supposed to feel like anymore. I mean, I'm not miserable. I get up, go to work, come home, play some games, meet up with friends now and then. It's not like my life is falling apart. But when I sit with Jack, when I see what he's built for himself, it's like there's this mirror right in front of me, and all I can see is everything I'm not. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. And then I wonder, if I tried to change things now, would it even matter? I leaned forward slightly, keeping my tone calm, steady. What do you mean by that? Sam let out a dry chuckle, though there was no real humor in it. I mean, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not 20 with endless time to figure things out. People my age are settling into careers, starting families, moving forward. And me? I feel like I just woke up from a 10-year nap and realized I've been standing still while the world kept moving. His jaw tightened, frustration flashing in his eyes. What's the point of starting now? What if I fail? What if I just end up exactly where I am, except now I've wasted even more time? I let his words settle in the air before responding. What if you don't fail? What if, a year from now, you look back and realize this was the moment everything changed? Sam blinked, caught off guard. His lips parted slightly like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. You say you're standing still, but standing still is also a choice. And the longer you wait, the heavier it will feel. If you don't start now, when will you? A muscle in his jaw twitched. He leaned back, folding his arms across his chest, his expression unreadable. I don't know. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But you do have to decide if you're willing to start asking the right questions. His fingers tapped against his arm, a nervous rhythm. He wasn't rejecting what I was saying, but he wasn't quite ready to embrace it either. Where would I even start? With one small step. Something simple. Something that reminds you that your life isn't set in stone. Sam was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, he nodded, just once, barely there, but it was enough. Sam let out a slow breath, his fingers drumming lightly against the arm of the chair. There was something different in his posture now, less tension, less weight pressing him down. He wasn't fixed, not yet, but there was a shift. A crack in the doubt that had held him in place for so long. I keep thinking about that night with Jack. How I walked out instead of answering him. It's been eating at me. I want to reach out, but I don't even know what to say. His voice was quieter now, as if he were admitting something to himself for the first time. What do you want to say? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. That I overreacted. That it wasn't about him. That I was just, ashamed. The last word hung in the air between us, heavier than anything else he'd said. Ashamed of what? Of wasting time. Of seeing so clearly what I should have done and knowing I can't go back and fix it. He rubbed his palms against his jeans, a nervous habit. But I also don't want to keep feeling like this. Like my life is something I just ended up with instead of something I built. I nodded, giving him space to process. You don't have to fix everything overnight. But you do have to start. He let out a slow, measured breath. Yeah. I know. A pause. Then, almost hesitantly. I was thinking, maybe I could take a class. Something small, just to see if I still know how to learn something new. I don't even know what yet. But I just. His fingers curled into fists, then relaxed. I just want to prove to myself that I can still change. For the first time since he walked into my office, there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Hope. And Jack? Sam let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. I'll text him. Not right now. Not yet. But soon. His lips curved into the smallest of smiles. I think he'd want to hear that I finally figured out what to say. Growth doesn't happen all at once. It's a process, and sometimes the hardest part is just deciding to begin. Have you ever had a moment where you realized it was time to start over? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk in the comments.